Emerald Cove about 1 to 43 words. By Marcella Cordova. Captain Gerard ripped off a weathered, itchy eye patch. He surveyed the seagulls and let out a jolly howl when he saw a mass of land jutted onto the horizon. The sun burned into the wood as he ordered bucket handlers to keep washing down the ship. Everything on the ship reeked of mildew, ocean life, and smoldering men who never bathed and drank beyond their heavy weight. "Keep things cool, we don't want to burn down before we get there." With squinty eyes, the lead bucket handler mopped down the main boards while Captain Gerard looked down from the highest deck. He was the captain, but he had a will handler who took directions and steered the ship southeast. Captain Gerard lost both arms in a battle against the Blue Titan's crew. He had set sail to an island off the coast of Japan during 1806. The crew were so close yet so far to the buried treasure of a lost civilization known as the Emerald Cove. Blue Titans were a motley crew of violent murderers and crazed misfits exiled from their homeland. Captain Gerard was attempting to recover the treasure in a somewhat legal fashion back in those days. Because the voyage was backed by British Army funds, he had to follow maritime laws, as well as strict orders from the Queen. His crew were mostly honest, hard-working Navy sailors. Sometimes he swings his shoulder nubs around as he imagines the days of yore when he wielded two swords, showing off his once impeccable fencing abilities. The past few years out at sea have been rough, and he lost many crew men to disease or malnutrition, and had a ship sunk or two. But when he reaches the Emerald Cove, he'll find treasures abound, and it wouldn't matter how many limbs go missing, how many battles he lost, he will be the ultimate victor in the end. "I'll cut off my legs to prove it," he often joked from his rum-soaked mustache. But losing more limbs could be the least of his concern. Many have tried and tragically failed to reach the Emerald Cove. Sunken ships and ghost crews haunt the high seas surrounding the mysterious island. Not much is even known of the exact dangers, since no one survives the journey to find the lost fortune of the Emerald Cove. And yet the myth is told from port to port. Hopeful seamen talk about what they do with their share. "I'd buy a house in every port town and keep a wife in each." A stout, weathered sailor disagreed, "That sounds like too much hassle. All I need is me booze, a little boat, and a decent winch every now or then." As the barrel wine poured and bellies protruded, belligerent and cheery voices grew louder, cackling and drowning in the glimmering sky above as the water grew darker below. The ship quietly rocked until most of the crew were lulled into a hazy slumber. Soon, all that could be heard in the cold distance were persistent coughing fits and wild snores like the sound of sleeping dogs. Fears and bad dreams come alive at night. The braver a man acted in daylight seemed to be indicative of the cowardice he'd display when most vulnerable, as he shivered and whimpered in his sleep, pulling a filthy, sweat-stained coat over his even filthier, life-stained face. It was around midnight when the moon hung lower and glowed far brighter than any other night. Captain Gerard thought the dreamy sky looked peculiar yet fantastic. He immediately felt he was on the right path and knew the stars were guiding him toward destiny, inching closer to the treasure of the Emerald Cove, because the gods decided that it was meant for only him. When he turned to face his room door, glee took over. He looked back to give a wink at a particularly twinkling star. It was at this moment, a large sea beast emerged from the waves and launched forward, attaching to his silver beard. Morning broke, the men were hungover but still readied at their stations and stood for hours, growing more impatient, waiting for Captain Gerard to appear. Stale chunks of bread were devoured, and a bucket went around as everyone got to slurp exactly one ladle of sand-filtered water. Some of the men poured their water ration on their bandana to wipe their face, twisting the bandana for any remaining drops of water into their disgusting mouths. Whispers and rumors had already started. He escaped to steal the treasure for his own. One pirate shouted. This accusation riled up the others. As they shook their fists demanding mutiny, Captain Gerard's deckhand drew his sword at them all. Legend told of his ability to kill 100 men with his bare hands. All the pirates hushed and waited for him to speak. "They call me Skull Crusher. There will be no more threats, no more talk of Captain Gerard's betrayal. I found him dead by octopus. He was suffocated." Everyone gasped and mumbled amongst each other, all wondering who's next. Except one voice cracked, "Liar. You're covering for him. What's in it for you?" Skull Crusher disappeared to quickly return, dragging Captain Gerard by the foot with the dead octopus still attached to his face. "I pierced its head soon as I found him." Only the sea and wind could be heard for the next several hours. Everyone sat in mourning, unsure of how to proceed. A slim pirate in tattered clothes pulled a rope to set the sails. He provocatively whistled out toward a bobbling fair maiden waiting in the water. This got the attention of several other sailors. There were several attractive fair maidens floating in the sea. Blondes, brunettes, and one redhead with beautiful sparkly eyes and flirty, inviting smiles. "Time for a little fun," said one of the men as he dove headfirst into the black ocean water. Many more followed suit. It was dehydration or mad hunger that had taken over their senses, or maybe animal impulses that drove them into the void. Perhaps it was boredom that drove a few, chasing novelty, to escape an internal sea of loneliness. Think about it, what are those women doing far away from land? It's a trick. The dwarf was the only man small enough to climb the tall post and view the sea, which stretched for hundreds of miles. He didn't see any nearby ship or land mass. But several more men didn't want reason to ruin their longing for something more. If the treasure of Emerald Cove couldn't be found and their captain died in the process, they will have their way with something. Anything better than staying on board with the sun always in their eyes and scraps to eat. But the dwarf persisted and warned of the risk. Fools! Bloody fools! He felt envious and disgusted as he watched a few more men swim out toward the beautiful creatures. Night fell upon the remaining crew, who consisted of the dwarf, the deckhand named Skull Crusher, and a small boy who passed out the bread and water rations. There was no sign of the others. It wasn't long before the ship disappeared too. All the while, the sky floated above, with its overabundance of shining stars, and a solitary moon, shimmering and lurking in its celestial distance like an emerald in a cove of mystery. Marcella Cordova writes fiction to settle the argument between her mind and heart. All submitted works for ReadZ prompts are considered first draft responses to the prompt. Thank you for reading. www.marcellacordova.com